There's something surreal about watching your life crack down the middle while everyone around you is laughing. Our 10th anniversary dinner was supposed to be a celebration. Emily had picked the place. Ravel and Rye, a moody little spot tucked into a corner of downtown Nashville. Candlelit tables, vintage leather booths, a jazz trio playing in the corner like we were in some movie. We'd invited a dozen people, close friends, a couple of coworkers, her sister from Charlotte. Everyone was dressed up, smiling, clinking glasses in our honor. If you'd looked around, you would have thought we were the golden couple. I would have thought so too. Once, Emily wore this pale blue silk dress, the one that tied low across the back. She always knew how to dress for the room, how to play a part without making it look like a performance. Her hair was pinned loosely, just enough effort to look effortless. The kind of look that made people lean in. I used to be proud of that. Now, as I watched her laugh a little too easily with the guy seated beside her, a guy she insisted on inviting from work, I felt something different brewing in my chest. I kept one hand around the base of my wine glass, swirling what was left of the Cabernet. My smile was steady, my posture good. But beneath it all, I was scanning her every move, watching the little flickers that didn't fit. Then it happened. As the waiter set down our dessert, a rich chocolate torte that looked more like artwork than food, Emily reached for her clutch. It slipped slightly as she opened it, and out slid something that made my heart thud like a dropped hammer. A hotel key card. It hit the table just next to her water glass, landing face up. White with silver trim. Classy. Discreet. Except for the bold black type near the bottom. Double room, late checkout. No mistaking it. No ignoring it. For a fraction of a second, time stalled. I looked at her. She looked down, saw it, and casually, far too casually, slid it back into her clutch with 2 fingers. Not a blink. Not a stammer. Just a smooth little sweep like she was picking up a napkin that had blown away. Then she leaned toward my sister, Rachel, who was sitting across the table, and said, "Ratch, how's Noah doing in daycare? Has he stopped biting the other kids yet?" The timing was impeccable. Everyone turned toward my sister and laughed. Conversation shifted instantly to toddler troubles and parenting horror stories. I sat there, caught in the middle of it all, hands still wrapped around my glass, wondering if anyone else had seen what I'd just seen. But of course no one had. Emily had always been quick, charming. She didn't just change subjects. She redirected the spotlight entirely. And it worked because by the time the table started toasting our 10 years together, no one was thinking about the key card. Except me. I didn't say anything. Not yet. I didn't need to. The evidence was enough for the moment. It didn't ask for confrontation. It just sat in my head like a ticking clock. Then her phone lit up. It was lying next to her plate, screen up, unusual for her. I happened to glance down at the exact moment 2 notifications stacked themselves. One right after the other. Your stay at the Roland is confirmed for tonight. Late checkout has been applied to your reservation. And then the screen went dark. She turned it over without missing a beat, face down like it was second nature. She didn't even acknowledge the notification, as if she hadn't seen it, or more likely, as if she was counting on me not seeing it. She kept smiling, kept laughing, clinked her glass against mine when someone offered another toast. Her lipstick left a soft pink ring on the rim. I remember thinking, does she think I'm that blind? Or does she not care if I see? That question didn't leave me for the rest of the evening. I sat through the entire dinner, tuning in and out of conversations, nodding at the right places, smiling on cue, all while my mind unraveled the implications. The Roland was less than a 10-minute walk from here. We'd stayed there once years ago, back when it had just opened. She said it was too expensive to go back, not worth the rate. And yet here she was, with a key card and a reservation confirmation for tonight. A double room, late checkout. Everything about it was deliberate. And somehow, the more she smiled that night, the colder I felt. At one point, our mutual friend Laura leaned toward me and said, "You two are amazing together. 10 years and still so in love. You're one of the good ones." I forced a smile and muttered, "Yeah, I guess we are." But I couldn't feel anything. My body was there at the table, laughing and playing the role of grateful husband. But my mind was somewhere else. Somewhere 10 steps ahead, trying to pull this all apart. Trying to remember if I had seen something like this before and just ignored it. Maybe I had. The thing is, infidelity doesn't arrive like a bomb. It drips in, subtle and slow. At first, it's just small absences. Then it's the way someone avoids your eyes when they say, "I love you." Eventually, it's a key card dropping out of a clutch. As dessert plates were cleared and the table broke into smaller conversations, I excused myself and walked out onto the patio. The night air was warm, sticky in the way only a southern September can be. I leaned on the railing, staring out at the city lights. I heard the door open behind me a moment later. Emily's heels clicked once on the stone. She stood beside me, her arm brushing against mine lightly. "Everything okay?" she asked. I looked at her. She was glowing in the city light, so beautiful it almost made me sick. "Yeah," I lied. "Just needed some air." She smiled softly and looked out at the skyline. "It's a beautiful night." "Yeah," I said again. "It really is." She didn't bring up the keycard, didn't offer an explanation, just stood there, serene as ever, sipping the last of her wine. That was when I knew. She wasn't going to admit anything, not unless I forced her to. And even then, she'd probably only admit to whatever I already knew. I looked at her one more time, really looked, and felt something shift in me. It was the first moment I realized I wasn't just suspicious. I was sure. They say your gut knows long before your heart catches up. That night, after the dinner, I lay awake in bed staring at the ceiling, while Emily slept just a few feet away, her breathing soft and even, like nothing was wrong. She didn't mention the hotel. She didn't leave. She just climbed into bed, kissed me goodnight like always, and drifted off. I didn't sleep at all. I lay there wondering how long I'd been fooling myself. And that's when all the puzzle pieces started snapping into place. It didn't happen all at once. Infidelity, like rust, creeps in quiet. You never see it forming until you realize half the foundation has already corroded beneath your feet. And I had seen the signs. I just didn't want to believe they meant anything. At the time, I wrote them off as quirks. Now, they looked like bright red warning flags I ignored. First, her phone. It used to ding constantly. Texts from friends, Instagram updates, work notifications, it was always going off. Then one day, it was just silent. Always on Do Not Disturb. She told me she needed the quiet time to decompress in the evenings. Said she was being mindful, trying to limit screen time. I wanted to support that, so I applauded it. But that wasn't all. She started flipping her phone over whenever we sat down to eat. If she left the room, it came with her, even just to the bathroom. If I reached for it by accident, say to check the weather or look something up, she'd grab it like I was holding a grenade. She didn't used to be that way. Then there were the gym clothes. One morning, I noticed a Nordstrom bag stuffed under the bathroom sink. I opened it, 2 brand new sets of high-end yoga outfits, tags still attached. I figured she'd show them off the next time she hit her morning Pilates class. But days went by, then weeks, and I never saw her wear them. I asked about it casually. She shrugged and said they didn't fit right, that she planned to return them. But she never did. A month later, they were gone. That might have been the end of it, except around the same time, I noticed she started withdrawing cash. Something we'd both stopped doing years ago. $60 here, $100 there. Always on a Friday. Always listed as, for yoga weekends. But I never saw her come home sweaty. No rolled-up mat in the back seat. No weekend gym bag. Just the occasional receipt for juice bars or boutique cafes in neighborhoods nowhere near her studio. Then there were the transfers. She's in marketing, and for the past year she'd been collaborating closely with a colleague, Ethan. I'd met him once at a holiday mixer. Friendly enough, good-looking in a non-threatening way. Or so I thought. One day, while reconciling our joint account, I handled most of our finances. I saw a series of money transfers labeled consultations. They were spaced out, usually at the end of the month. Each one for just under $300. It felt off. So I asked her. "Oh, that's just reimbursement," she said. "Ethan helped me with my presentation deck and some strategy planning stuff I was stuck on." I raised an eyebrow. You're paying him personally? She waved it off. No, it's not like that. It's just peer-to-peer. We're both freelancers on the side now. It's normal. I nodded. Maybe she was right. Maybe I was overthinking. But it didn't sit well. Because it wasn't the money, it was the consistency. The repetition. The fact that she never mentioned this freelance arrangement until I confronted her. But what really got to me were the boutique hotel charges. One evening, I was checking through our rewards card benefits, trying to plan a surprise trip for our anniversary, and saw a curious charge from 3 weeks prior. A romantic package, champagne, rose petals, and breakfast for two, booked at the Whitmore, a hotel known more for getaways than business stays. I asked her if she'd stayed there. Her face went blank for a second. Then she laughed. Oh, yeah. I had a client event. They were sponsoring some kind of hospitality package. I didn't even use the breakfast, honestly. Just crashed for the night. But we have 2 hotel cards, I said. You didn't use either of them. She smiled tightly. Because it wasn't a business trip. It was a last-minute booking through Ethan's contact. Cheaper that way. I wanted to believe her. But then I found the receipt in the trash later that week, and the room had been booked for 2 guests. The next sign came in the form of a taxi statement. She rarely used taxis, Uber, sure, but cabs? Never. So when a printed receipt ended up on our kitchen counter, I was confused. It was from a Thursday night. Drop-off location, the riverfront. Pick-up location, the business district. I asked where she'd gone that night. She said she had drinks with her team at a place near her office, then took an Uber home. But this wasn't Uber, and it didn't go home. It went to the river. She looked me in the eye and lied. Easily. Effortlessly. And maybe the worst part was how little it bothered her to do it. That weekend, I started cleaning out the storage room in the basement. Just busy work. Something to distract me. I opened a box of old Christmas lights, and as I lifted it, I heard a dull thud. Something had fallen behind the shelving unit. When I looked closer, I found a small safe tucked behind a stack of holiday decorations. One I'd never seen before. It was wedged back behind the bins, hidden just enough to not be noticeable unless you were actively reorganizing. I didn't know the combination. Still don't. But I recognized the model. Bought it for her years ago. Back when she'd wanted a safe place to store her passport and jewelry. She never mentioned she was using it again. Never told me where it had gone. I stared at it for a long time, trying to imagine what might be inside. Part of me didn't want to know. Another part wanted to smash it open on the spot. Instead, I slid it back behind the bins, untouched. I didn't need to see what was inside to understand what it meant. Secrets. Everything was wrapped in them now. Her silence. Her stories. Her eyes when she said, "I love you," and blinked just a second too long. The person I used to know was buried under excuses, half-truths, and well-rehearsed smiles. And I had been too tired or maybe too scared to look straight at it. But not anymore. That night at Ravel and Rye was the crack that shattered the mirror. The keycard. The notifications. The way she deflected without flinching. That wasn't the beginning. It was the confirmation. Everything before had just been smoke. Now I could see the fire. There's a moment when suspicion becomes certainty. That feels like your lungs stop working. Like your mind wants to keep rationalizing, keep negotiating, but your body already knows. This is it. This is real. That moment came for me 3 days after our anniversary dinner. I'd taken the day off work and told Emily I needed a mental health day. That wasn't a lie exactly. I just didn't tell her what I was doing with it. She left early that morning in her usual rush. Perfectly dressed, expensive coffee in hand. A kiss on the cheek that landed like a feather but felt like a shove. The moment the door closed, I went to work. Over the years, I'd developed something of a digital footprint monitoring habit, not out of paranoia, just practicality. I managed our home finances, subscription accounts, shared calendars. Passwords were stored in a secure vault. At first, it was just helpful. But now it was a lifeline. I started with our credit card statements, every purchase from the past 60 days. I filtered by merchant and location, narrowing it down to hotels, rideshares, anything with inconsistent timestamps. And there it was, the Roland Hotel, the same boutique spot tied to the keycard she dropped at our anniversary dinner. She had a booking on the night of our celebration, paid in full through our shared card. Check-in, 9:30 p.m. Room type, double queen suite. Late checkout confirmed. Total, $431.65. But what made my stomach turn wasn't the reservation. It was the charge for a companion welcome package. I didn't even know what that was until I looked it up. It included a chilled bottle of Prosecco, silk robe rentals, and a shared morning ritual breakfast basket for two. But I still didn't stop there. I went back into our shared cloud storage, where her phone photos had always synced. It was something we both enabled years ago and had simply forgotten about. As she became more protective of her phone, I assumed she'd turned it off. She hadn't. The album labeled Favorites had been recently updated. The newest image wasn't of me. It wasn't even of us. It was a blurry, nighttime *T in a hotel room mirror. Her face partially obscured. A man behind her, shirtless, his hand on her waist. She hadn't even cropped him out. Just tilted the camera like that would erase the truth. My hand shook as I closed the image. I told myself to breathe, that I needed proof, not emotion. I needed more. So I drove to the Roland. I parked across the street and stared at the tall windows for what felt like an hour. It was the middle of the day. The place looked ordinary. People checking in, valet staff chatting on the curb. But inside, it had become the backdrop for the worst version of my marriage. I walked up to the reception desk. The woman behind the counter smiled and asked if I needed help. I gave her a half-truth, that I'd lost a receipt from a recent visit and needed it reprinted for accounting purposes. She hesitated, but I gave her Emily's name, the date, even the last 4 digits of our card. She printed the invoice without blinking. There, at the bottom, was the final confirmation. Guest names: Emily Caldwell, Ethan M. Reservation contact, E. Morris at graylink.com. I knew that name, Ethan Morris. The coworker she swore she barely spoke to outside of project meetings. The one she'd sent consultation transfers to every other Friday. The one I had met exactly once. A 5-minute handshake at her office's holiday mixer. He had smiled at me, complimented my shoes, and thanked me for sharing such a talented woman. Now he was sharing my wife's hotel bed. My stomach turned. I felt the edges of my vision darken. I forced a nod to the receptionist and walked out like I hadn't just watched my marriage burst into flames. But I still wasn't done. Because now I wanted the kind of proof that couldn't be brushed aside or excused. Not vague receipts. Not blurry photos. I wanted the kind of evidence that would hold up in court if it came to that. So I called someone. A friend of mine from college, Trevor, worked in private security. He owed me a favor. I explained the situation, carefully leaving out emotion, and asked if he had a way to pull camera footage from the Roland's parking garage, particularly from the night of our anniversary. He called me back 3 hours later. There's a camera facing the east entrance to the garage, he said. Caught everything. He sent the file. I watched it that night in my home office with the door locked and the lights off, like I was preparing for a horror movie. The clip was clear. At 9:42 p.m. Emily's silver SUV pulled into the garage. She parked. A man exited from the passenger side, Ethan. Tall, clean-shaven, casual in that trying too hard kind of way. She got out after him. They walked close. He said something. She laughed. Then he took her hand. Not a friendly handshake. Not a colleague's high five. Fingers laced. Familiar. Mate. They disappeared around the corner toward the elevators. A minute later, they were in the frame again, this time kissing. Her arms around his neck. His hands low on her back. Then the elevator opened, and they stepped inside together. I didn't cry. I didn't throw anything. I just sat there, watching the truth. Not guessing. Not imagining. Just watching it frame by frame. The next morning, I checked our financial app and saw a new purchase. $89.99 at a corner phone store downtown. I looked up the SKU. Disposable cell phone. Pay as you go. My hands went cold. It was billed to her personal account. A new device she hadn't mentioned. One not connected to our family plan. And just like that, I knew how she'd been communicating with him. The secrecy, the late nights, the missed calls, the do not disturb hours. It wasn't just infidelity. It was a campaign. Planned, hidden, managed like a second life. And all this time I had been what? The husband, the fallback, the name on the mortgage, the guy she posed with for Instagram anniversary posts while sneaking around in hotel hallways and texting a man whose last name I barely remembered. But now I had everything. I had the receipts, the video, the hotel invoice with both their names, the digital footprint of her deception, and the knowledge that every time she said, "You're imagining things," or "You're just being paranoid," she was covering for him. She had made me doubt myself to protect her affair, and I let her. No more. This wasn't just betrayal. It was strategy, calculated, cold. And so I made a decision. I wasn't going to confront her, not yet. I wasn't going to scream or beg or ask her to explain the unexplainable. She'd played her hand. Now it was my turn. By the time Emily got home that night, I had already started implementing North Star. That's what I called it, half as a joke, half as a promise. It was my quiet exit strategy. My way out of the shadow she'd cast over our life. I'd started sketching it months ago, back when my suspicions were just static in the background. It was never meant to be used. Just a safety net. A list of steps, of financial pivots and legal lock-ins, just in case my gut was right. Turns out it was. So while she walked through the front door smiling, holding Thai takeout and humming like everything was fine, I was already 5 steps ahead. I kissed her on the forehead, asked about her day, ate the pad CEW she brought home, and I didn't let her see a thing. Because you don't warn someone when you're leaving their orbit, you just drift away. That night, after she fell asleep watching one of those dating reality shows, I sat down at my desk and opened the private folder on my laptop titled North Star. Step by step. No emotion. Just logic. The first thing I did was reroute my retirement contributions. We had a shared long-term plan, both of us funneling money into IRAs through the same advisory group. But now, I triggered the clause I'd buried into my account months ago, an automatic withdrawal into an individual annuity under my name only. Locked. Irrevocable. Legally protected. She wouldn't even see the shift. Next came the house. We'd bought it 5 years ago, both names on the deed. But 2 years into our marriage, I'd quietly restructured ownership into a family trust, after a conversation with my attorney about future-proofing our assets. Emily had signed the paperwork back then without blinking, said she didn't understand all the legalese but trusted me. I remember the exact words she used. "You handle the hard stuff. I handle the fun stuff." Well, the hard stuff had just saved my life. The trust protected the home from third-party claims unless both trustees agreed, which we never would again. I activated a clause that barred new liens or collateral attempts without dual consent. No matter what happened now, she couldn't use the house as leverage. Then came the vehicles. She drove the Range Rover. I drove a used Audi. Both were technically leased through a business umbrella I'd set up during a consulting phase 3 years ago. One she'd always rolled her eyes at but never bothered to ask about. I logged in to the fleet management account and revoked her access. Insurance, fuel cards, GPS privileges, all stripped in one click. If she tried to use the vehicle tomorrow, she'd find it disabled via the app, waiting for a tow back to the dealership. She wouldn't know why. She'd just assume a technical glitch. But it was me, quietly, methodically, removing her from everything. Then came the credit lines. Our joint cards had limits tied to my income bracket, with her listed as an authorized user. That night, I removed her from all of them. Every single one. Within minutes, she had no access to emergency spending, overdraft protection, or our travel perks. I even redirected all statements to my P.O. box. One she didn't know existed. Our shared checking account, I left it alone, but only because it barely held anything. She'd always deposited her salary into her personal account, her independence, she used to say, but contributed a token amount monthly to the joint fund. Grocery runs, utilities, streaming services. Nothing more. So I let her keep it. A hollow shell of a partnership. A digital echo of something long gone. But the real power move came from the postnuptial agreement she had signed 4 years ago. We drafted it after her brief scare with a business liability issue. She had panicked, worried that if she ever got sued, our personal assets could be jeopardized. So I offered her peace of mind. A postnup that shielded us both. It also happened to include a few trigger clauses, buried beneath sections she clearly hadn't read too closely. One of them tied financial penalties to evidence of marital misconduct, defined with painfully clear language, receipts, video, digital records, and third-party verification. I had all 4. And when I dropped them into a secure folder and sent them to my attorney under the subject line Activate Clause 4G, I knew exactly what that meant. She'd forfeited claim to any asset not in her name, which, thanks to North Star, was nearly everything. I wasn't punishing her. I was just removing myself from the game. She had made me her second choice, her emotional backup, the dependable, steady man she could keep in the background while chasing her excitement elsewhere. But I don't do backup plans. And I don't do silence anymore. Still, I didn't confront her. Not yet. I made coffee that morning like normal. Kissed her on the temple as she walked out in a silk blouse I'd never seen before. Probably a gift from him. She said something about being late for an all-hands meeting and left her half-drunk espresso on the counter. I watched her drive away in the Range Rover. It was the last time she'd do that. At 10:13 a.m. I confirmed the tow request through the fleet company. The dealership picked it up by noon. Meanwhile, my attorney forwarded her a copy of the post-nuptial trigger notification, certified mail, overnight, with a printed copy of the invoice from the Roland, a still frame of the security footage, and a summary of the financial transitions. By 4 p.m. the wheels were already turning. She texted me around 5:40. Emily, hey babe, did you take the car? It's not in the garage. I think it got towed. Emily, also, I just got some weird letter from your lawyer. Is everything okay? Emily, Nathan, I didn't respond. There was nothing to say. I didn't block her. I didn't ghost her. I just stopped participating. Stopped playing the role. Stopped filling the silence she created. She called at 6:02. I let it ring out. She called again at 6:07. Then 6:12. Then 6:20. At 6:24, she left a voicemail. Her voice cracked halfway through it. Said she was confused, scared, that she felt blindsided. She wasn't scared 2 nights ago in that hotel room. She wasn't confused when she slid that key card into her purse while laughing at our anniversary dinner. She was just betting that I'd stay, that I'd swallow the betrayal, that I'd keep orbiting her while she flew off with someone else. But I had already left, and I wasn't coming back. The thing about pulling away from someone is, it creates space. And space, whether they like it or not, always fills with consequence. I didn't need to expose Emily. I didn't need to go nuclear. I just had to leave her alone with the mess she created. Turns out that was enough. By the following Monday, the ripple effects of North Star had *N to hit shore, and neither of them were ready. It started with Ethan. From what I've gathered, courtesy of a friend in HR at Greylink Media, he was called into an unannounced compliance review by the internal auditing team. Apparently, someone had submitted an anonymous complaint about his misuse of corporate funds and possible conflict of interest involving another employee, Emily. See, I'd attached a single file to my attorney's certified postnup packet. Not just for legal reasons. Not for leverage. Just to leave a trail. Inside that packet was an itemized expense list with cross-reference dates. Boutique hotel bookings that matched line for line with Ethan's reimbursed business travel claims. He'd filed for meals and lodging under project code 9B23, listed as client-facing events. But according to public calendar logs, there were no scheduled clients on those days. He hadn't just betrayed another man's marriage. He'd violated his company's ethics policy. Repeatedly. So, HR started digging. His card usage showed 3 upscale hotel stays in the past 45 days. each one during a remote strategy week when he was allegedly working from home. Worse, he had once listed Emily as an attendee in an internal trip log, claiming she was part of a brainstorming cohort. Only problem? She wasn't on the department's travel calendar. The moment those red flags lined up, Graylink launched a full review. That same day, Emily got hit from another direction. She tried to apply for a short-term bridge loan using the house as collateral. I found out through an email notification from the trust's legal custodian. Something triggered automatically whenever a claim attempt is filed against the protected asset. She used our old home address, said it was for debt consolidation, used her maiden name on the application, probably hoping to appear solo on paper. But the property, legally untouchable. The trust denied third-party claims unless both trustees signed, and I had already revoked her rights to access. When she called the bank to follow up, the loan officer reportedly told her she didn't have the authority to pledge the home as collateral. I imagine that's when it clicked, that she had no legal standing to touch what she once called our foundation. Then came the car. She called the dealership directly, according to the service log forwarded to me. Demanded to know why the Range Rover had been towed. Claimed it was stolen from her garage. When they explained that the vehicle was part of a business lease agreement and that access had been revoked by the primary account holder, she hung up mid-call. Apparently, she showed up at the dealership later that day, furious and escalating. They had to explain again in person that she had no title, no lease, and no insurance coverage without me. She left in an Uber. At this point, the only thing still active in her name was our joint checking account, the one that had maybe $300 in it, most of which was hers. She couldn't access the credit cards, couldn't use the car, couldn't tap the house. And the man she risked it all for? He was unraveling faster than she was. The next day, my buddy in HR told me Ethan had been placed on administrative leave pending investigation. Company policy. Nothing public yet, but serious enough that his office access badge had been disabled. No meetings, no devices, no more Thursday working lunches. I didn't cheer. I didn't smile. This wasn't revenge. It was gravity. Actions fall. And eventually they land. The next hit came unexpectedly. That weekend, Graylink Media hosted their annual corporate charity gala at the very hotel where Emily and Ethan had been caught on camera. The Roland. I didn't plan that. I didn't have to. Life has a way of aligning irony with perfect cruelty. Emily attended, of course. She'd RSVP'd months ago, even helped plan parts of the event. She wore a deep emerald dress, one I didn't recognize, and showed up alone. I wasn't there, but someone I knew was. My friend Rachel from finance had gone as a +1 for her boyfriend, who works in legal compliance. She texted me in the middle of the night, "Nathan, you won't believe what happened." Emily got pulled aside by compliance halfway through the dinner. Quiet but very official. People noticed. They told her she's suspended pending audit. Suspended. No email. No forewarning. Just a polite hand on the shoulder, a whisper in her ear, and a soft escort to the elevator. The investigation wasn't just about Ethan anymore. It was about both of them. Unauthorized trips, expense reports, interdepartmental relationships. She'd crossed the line. I heard from another source later that the company's legal team had identified several overlapping expense logs between Emily's campaigns and Ethan's travel reports. On paper, it looked like they were running side operations under corporate cover. Even if that wasn't true, perception was enough to trigger a formal inquiry. And once compliance gets involved, reputations don't survive intact. Later that same weekend, she tried to post bail for Ethan. Apparently, he had been arrested, not for anything dramatic, just a pending bench warrant related to a DUI case he hadn't disclosed during his hiring process. Normally, bail would be simple, just a bond and a signature. But Emily couldn't secure the funds. She tried using what she claimed was her half of the house as a surety asset. The clerk denied it. She had no legal ownership. She tried to use her car. It was no longer hers. She attempted a credit pull, but all joint lines were closed, and her personal score had tanked after months of carrying revolving balances solo. She had nothing left to leverage. Nothing she could offer. She left the courthouse that afternoon without him. I was told she cried on the steps. Alone. I didn't go see it. I didn't want to. That same night, I hosted a small birthday dinner at my place. Just 4 close friends. The house felt warm for the first time in a long time. Quiet, yes, but not heavy. We ordered takeout, drank wine, sat around the fire pit out back. No grand speeches, no bitterness, just presence. Someone handed me a slice of cake and said, "To clean slates," and that's what it was. Not revenge, not triumph, just peace. A cold, hard-earned kind of peace. One that comes when you stop fighting for something that was never really yours to begin with, and start protecting what still is.